Chapter 51 Devouring Spirit Bee. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 51 Devouring Spirit Bee. Buzz. A subtle buzzing sound emitted out from within the depths of the dark forest. Yet, it instantly changed Mu Chen's expression. Although the Black Eerie Swamp was filled with dangers and a single mistake could cost their lives, there was one thing which people would dread within the Black Eerie Swamp. It was a low-rank spiritual beast known as the Devouring Spirit Bee. This spiritual beast was only the size of a palm and had the strength of a spiritual movement initial phase. However, everybody who entered the Black Eerie Swamp knew how terrifying it would be if they met the Devouring Spirit Bee within the Black Eerie Swamp. With the Devouring Spirit Bee's strength, they would naturally be able to crush it easily if they met one of them. Unfortunately, it did not move by itself, and instead, millions of them would move together every single time they took action. They were like a dark cloud as they swept over the swamp. Any spiritual beasts, even if they were middle-rank spiritual beasts comparable to spiritual rotation stage late phase, would turn to bones in an instant as they enter their paths. Within the Black Eerie Swamp, even the high-rank spiritual beasts would have to temporarily retreat if they met a swarm of devouring spirit bees. Dad! Therefore, when Mu Chen heard this subtle buzzing sound, fear appeared within his heart and he hastily whispered. "Hurry and run, there's a swarm of devouring spirit bees." When his words came out, Mu Feng's face also changed as a hint of fear appeared. He was immediately decisive and he waved his hand as he shouted. "Hurry, we're leaving this place." When these words faded, he took the lead and darted away to the other direction of the Black Eerie Swamp. He did not care about confronting Lu Qingtian. If they were bound by the devouring spirit bees, even if he managed to escape, the Mu territory's men would definitely suffer heavy casualties. When their group of men left, the Lu territory's side was stunned. Lu Qingtian frowned before his face immediately became serious. "It's a swarm of devouring spirit bees, run." Lu Qingtian let out a cry and did not hesitate to bring his men in another direction. It was evident that they knew how troublesome a swarm of devouring spirit bees were as well. The tense atmosphere between the two groups instantly vanished and they hurriedly retreated by themselves. Just when they were hurriedly retreating, an endless black cloud surged out from within the depths of the dark forest. A buzzing sound rang out as if the air was trembling. Bang! When the black cloud surged out, the empty ground also shook. A mouse-like black spiritual beast desperately drilled down to escape. However, it was clear that the black cloud was faster. It flew rapidly towards the black spiritual beast and a shrill roar sounded out before fading away quickly. Only white bones covered with bloodstains were left behind after the black cloud passed by. If you looked carefully during this moment, you would be able to see that there were actually countless palm-sized black bees within the black cloud. The black bees' mouths were covered with hideous fangs and blood dripped out from them. The Lu territory and Mu territory's men withdrew quickly. However, they still underestimated the speed of the devouring spirit bee swarm. In just a few short instances, the huge black cloud spread out and a dozen or so men from both sides were engulfed by the black cloud. Afterwards, shrill screams rang out from within. Perhaps the fresh blood had aroused the desire for them to kill, because the devouring spirit bees did not immediately head back. Instead, it split into black torrents and headed quickly towards the two fleeing groups. "Dodge!" Mu Feng hurriedly shouted when he saw the black torrent stabbing towards them. The party instantly divided into two and was separated from each other. Then, they gritted their teeth as they stared at the black torrent. They did not dare to pass through. Little Mu. Zhou Ye's face changed when he noticed that Mu Chen was separated from them. He attempted to forcibly charge through the black torrent formed by the devouring spirit bees. However, he was stopped by Mu Feng. "Relax, that boy isn't as weak as you think. Moreover, old Duan and the others are with him. We should first avoid this swarm of devouring spirit bees. He knows where to reunite with us." Mu Feng said as he glanced at the figures which were separated from them by the black torrent. When Zhou Yi heard this, he hesitated for a moment before nodding his head. Although Mu Chen was still small, his performance had always been quite assuring. With Mu Chen's cautiousness, the dangers within the Black Yuri swamp should not be a big problem for him. Mu Feng waved his hand and led the men following him into the forest. They escaped far away from the dangerous and mighty devouring spirit bees swarm. How unlucky! On the other side of the black torrent, Mu Chen saw that their group was separated from the others and helplessly shook his head. However, it was apparent that he did not dare to forcibly break through the torrent formed by the devouring spirit bees. He did not hesitate and fled in the other direction. Right now, he must get far away from these dangerous things. Little Lord, be careful. Old Duan brought a couple of men and followed Mu Chen. Since they were separated now, he had to properly protect Mu Chen. Otherwise, he wouldn't have the face to see Mu Feng if anything happened to Mu Chen. Mu Chen nodded. He casted a glance behind him and his eyes were cold. This was because he noticed the black swarm surging towards them. Hurry and run. Mu Chen let out a shout and dark black spiritual energy surged through his body. He quickly pushed his speed to its very limits. If they were surrounded by the devouring spirit bee swarm, they were almost guaranteed to die. Duan Wei and the others also noticed the danger and swiftly followed Mu Chen. They did not dare to say anything anymore. Although they were not slow, the devouring spirit bee swarm speed was still faster. They could feel that the devouring spirit bees were gradually getting closer to them. Damn it! Duan Wei was also aware of this situation and he immediately cursed. He gritted his teeth and attempted to turn around to stop them. Uncle Duan, don't act impulsive. However, just when Duan Wei was about to turn around, he was suddenly grabbed by Mu Chen. The latter pointed and said, "It seems that they have given up." Duan Wei was stunned. He looked over and noticed that the devouring spirit bee swarm suddenly stopped their chase. They hovered around as they buzzed. Then, suddenly, they swiftly headed towards the north-western direction. Mu Chen was slightly surprised as he stared at this scene. He immediately frowned. It seems that he could faintly hear the sound of a flute coming from a distance away. This extremely weak and peculiar flute sound seemed to attract the devouring spirit bee swarm. Could it be that the devouring spirit bee swarm was actually controlled by someone? A surprising idea appeared within Mu Chen's heart. This flute sound did not seem like it was caused naturally. Little Lord, these tiny things have finally retreated. We should hurry back to reunite with the Territory Lord. Duan Wei let out a sigh of relief when he noticed that they had gotten rid of the devouring spirit bees. When Mu Chen heard this, his eyes flashed for a moment and he gently said, "Uncle Duan, let us follow the devouring spirit bees over and see." Duan Wei was stunned for a moment when he heard these words. He quickly said, "Little Lord, it's too dangerous. It's fine. We will not get close to them and only watch them. If there are any problems, we will immediately retreat." Mu Chen pondered for a moment before speaking. If the devouring spirit bee swarm was really controlled by humans, then could have other forces obtained the information regarding the 9 Netherbird? Seeing Mu Chen's insistence on it, Duan Wei could only helplessly shake his head. He immediately said, "Fine, we'll follow them. However, if anything happens, I will immediately bring the little lord away." "Yes, thank you Uncle Duan." Mu Chen smiled. He did not hesitate any longer and swiftly followed. Seeing this, Duan Wei led the men as they followed. The devouring spirit bee's speed was extremely fast. However, with Mu Chen closely following them, along with the black cloud being too conspicuous, they did not lose it along the way. As they followed, Mu Chen's face became more and more suspicious. This is because the subtle flute sound was become clearer and clearer. "Little Lord, the devouring spirit bee swarm has stopped." Duan Wei suddenly whispered as he looked nervously in front. Mu Chen also lifted his head over to look when he heard this. He could see a basin in front of them. Within the basin was a tiny black hill. On this black hill was a strange black tree, which was covered densely with devouring spirit bees. The peculiar flute sound seemed to be coming from there. However, the sound was too subtle. If one did not carefully listen, it was impossible to detect it. Mu Chen's eyes carefully scanned through this area. However, he did not notice any existence there. This made him confused. Could it be that he misjudged this? Mu Chen frowned and stared at the black tree. His eyes moved slowly up. Finally, he stared at the top of the tree and his pupils immediately shrunk. At that location, he saw a gray figure faintly appearing and disappearing there. Could there really be someone? Chapter 52 Spirit Bug Flute. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Chapter 52 Spirit Bug Flute. Mu Chen's gaze remained fixed on the crown of the black tree. At that location, he could vaguely see a gray figure. However, he felt something was off as the gray figure did not show any signs of life. What exactly is that? Mu Chen frowned. Uncle Duan, I'll have to trouble you with something. Mu Chen's eyes flashed and he gently whispered. What orders do you have, little lord? Duan Wei immediately replied. Mu Chen approached over and said something besides Duan Wei's ears. When the latter heard this, his face instantly changed and turned pale. Little lord, it's too dangerous. Duan Wei earnestly attempted to persuade him. He did not know why Mu Chen wanted to do such a dangerous act. This was the nest of the devouring spirit bees. If they were surrounded, there was no way out. Uncle Duan, I know what I'm doing. Trust me. Mu Chen whispered. The boy had an exceptionally serious expression. Not even the slightest recklessness could be seen within his black eyes as they twinkled coldly. Seeing Mu Chen insisting on this, Duan Wei could only let out a wry smile. He gestured towards the few men beside him and swiftly departed. Mu Chen also lowered his body when he noticed them heading away. He hid his body within the bushes and had his eyes fixed on the giant black tree. After approximately 10 minutes since Duan Wei and the others departed, a commotion rang out from a distance. A dozen or so spiritual beasts were driven out of the forest and headed over this way. Buzz. The silence here was destroyed by the dozen or so spiritual beasts. Numerous bloody red lights lit up and the air began to tremble. Buzzing sounds instantly rang out as the countless devouring spirit bees surged out. They formed into a black cloud and rushed towards the spiritual beasts. Roar! Only now did the fleeing spiritual beasts discover the crisis in front of them. They instantly roared out crazily and turned around. However, as they bolted away, the black cloud swiftly chased after them. As the devouring spirit bees left, the giant black tree became completely bare. Although there were still some devouring spirit bees remaining, they were not a concern without their number advantage. Mu Chen's body instantly charged out at this moment. He directly headed towards the giant black tree and went straight towards the treetop like a nimble monkey. Along the way, a couple devouring spirit bees tried to interfere with him. However, they were easily taken care of by him. Mu Chen's speed was extremely fast. Within 10 breaths, he had leapt onto the treetop. The treetop was rather spacious, but was quite hidden. The branches which stretched out covered its secrets. Because of the time constraints, Mu Chen did not dare to act slowly. His eyes instantly looked towards the inside of the tree. He could see a figure actually sitting amongst the weeds. However, this figure did not have the slightest hint of life because it was a skeleton. Moreover, a tattered gray outfit was on the surface of its body. Mu Chen stared in surprise at the skeleton on the treetop. He carefully approached it and waited to see if there was any change before feeling relieved. As he approached the skeleton, he discovered that half of the bones were charred. Signs of withering seemed to be on the charred bones. It seemed that this skeleton had suffered a heavy injury while he was still alive. Mu Chen's eyes glanced through the surroundings and stopped at the bone palm in front. Vague writing seemed to be on it. He waved his sleeves and swept the leaves apart as his vision fixed onto that location. My name is Tian Chong, I am from the Bug Spirit clan. As I was traveling, I found traces of a 9 netherbird. Greed surged through me and I attempted to get it. After many pains, I finally obtained my wish. However, only then did I discover. The writing afterwards became blurry. However, Mu Chen could see words of hatred in the end. This made him stunned and his heart shivered. So this person also discovered the traces of the 9 netherbird and he nearly succeeded in obtaining it. But at the last moment, some sort of misfortune occurred. Bug Spirit Clan. Mu Chen muttered to himself. He had heard faintly that there was a rather strange clan in the Great Thousand Worlds, who manipulated millions of bugs within the world. Others named them as spirit bug users. They had extremely secretive means and would be troublesome if they were provoked. Mu Chen did not imagine that one of them would die here. Mu Chen pondered for a moment. Then, his eyes turned their attention to the other bone palm of the skeleton. He noticed a black flute which was a couple inches long within the bone palm. Various insect patterns were engraved on the flute and a subtle flute sound rang out from the flute whenever a breeze appeared. This item, could it be a spirit bug flute? Mu Chen seemed to be lost in thought. It was said that the spirit bug users would all have a spirit bug flute that they used to control the spirit bugs that they raised. Could the black flute in front of him be that item? So when I heard the subtle flute sound, it was because of the breeze entering this spirit bug flute that it seems that the devouring spirit bees formed their nest here because of the flute sound as well. Mu Chen suddenly realized this and immediately let out a cry of praise. These spirit bug users sure have a rather peculiar method. Senior, since you have already died, this young one will inherit your relic. Mu Chen bowed down towards the skeleton. He carefully took the black flute away from it. If he was not mistaken, the spirit bug flute should be able to summon the devouring spirit bees. However, he cannot use it recklessly. After all, he was not a spirit bug user. If he really summoned the devouring spirit bees over and he failed to control them, he was simply asking for trouble. Although that's the case, Mu Chen was not willing to return back empty-handed. This item would eventually be eroded through years of weathering. Instead of letting this item get ruined, it might have a bit of use within his hands. Just after Mu Chen collected the spirit bug flute and was about to leave, he suddenly glanced at the gray outfit of the skeleton. He hesitated for a moment before praying to the bones. Afterwards, he touched the tattered gray clothes. Because of the years of erosion, the gray outfit was reduced to ashes when Mu Chen touched it. 2 transparent bottles appeared under the bones. It was obvious that the bottles were not made from any ordinary material. Even after all these years, they were still well preserved. Mu Chen picked up the 2 bottles. Within the bottles, there was a black liquid. However, Mu Chen did not know the effects of the black liquid and pondered for a moment. He carefully opened the bottle cover and a strange aroma drifted out. Buzz. The moment the strange aroma was released, Mu Chen felt the giant black tree tremble for a moment. Then, he noticed that many devouring spirit bees drilled out from the tree trunk and headed towards the treetop with scarlet eyes. Seeing this, Mu Chen was shocked. He immediately shut the cover of the bottle and quickly placed it within his mustard seed bracelet. The aroma seemed to have an effect of attracting devouring spirit bees. I can't remain here any longer. Mu Chen did not dare to stay here any longer when he noticed the commotion. The spiritual beasts that Duan Wei and the others had driven out would not pin down the devouring spirit bees for long. If he did not leave now, there was no escape route for him when he was surrounded by the devouring spirit bees. Thank you, Senior. Mu Chen cupped his hands towards the skeleton. He did not remain at this place any longer and jumped off the giant black tree. Then, he quickly rushed to the forest. After passing through the forest, he stopped suddenly and waited for Duan Wei and the others to come. Suddenly, a fierce wind erupted above his head and he was startled. His toes touched the ground and he dashed backwards. Who? A hint of coldness flashed through Mu Chen's eyes. He lifted his head and saw a familiar figure standing on the tree trunk in front of him. That figure was staring at him with indifferent eyes. It was actually Lu Mubai. Lu Mubai stared coldly at Mu Chen and stretched out his hand as he faintly said. It seems that you're really lucky. You can find decent items wherever you go. So what did you get this time above the treetop? Hand it over. Chapter 53 Collision. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Chapter 53 Collision. Under the tree shades, Mu Chen stared at Lu Mubai as Lu Mubai stared down from above at him. He did not expect to encounter him at this place. It seems that the Lu territory's men were also separated by the devouring spirit bee's swarm earlier. Moreover, from this guy's appearance, he also noticed the subtle flute sound and came over. Unfortunately, he reacted a step too slow as Mu Chen was there first. Since Lu Mubai wanted to make him hand over the item, Mu Chen gently let out a mocking smile. This isn't the Northern Spiritual Academy. If I were to kill you, it will not cause any trouble. Therefore, I hope that you can accept reality right now. I think that with your personality, you would not do any foolish and desperate attempts. Seeing Mu Chen ignoring him, a touch of darkness surged through Lu Mubai's eyes as he slowly spoke. I was not afraid even when Xue Tu was chasing after me. Just who do you think you are, Lu Mubai? Mu Chen smiled and replied. That idiot, Xue Tu, was probably unlucky and met with the silver, horned panther dragon within the northern spiritual field, right? You're quite lucky since that kind of thing occurred. Lu Mubai had a hint of ridicule within his eyes. They had actually investigated it after the incident occurred and found traces of a fight within the silver, horned panther dragon's territory. At that location, scraps of Xue Tu's clothes were found there. This discovery made them understand why Mu Chen was able to escape from Xue Tu's day. So since Xue Tu died against the silver, horned panther dragon, how is it related to you? You are still naive if you think that you can frighten me with this. Lu Mubai smiled coldly. They had predicted the events that had happened on that day. However, they thought that the appearance of the silver horned panther dragon was just a coincidence. They did not imagine that a boy had meticulously calculated all these steps in order to send Xue Tu to death. Mu Chen smiled. He did not get hot-headed and argue with Lu Mubai. He was fond of the individuals that tried to act smart. Right now, will you hand over the item to me by yourself? Lu Mubai extended his hand out again. However, a faint spiritual energy surged out faintly through his palms this time. Mu Chen gave a slight smile and shook his head. Boom! The instant that Mu Chen shook his head, Lu Mubai's eyes turned completely cold. He swooped straight down like a hawk chasing its prey and the spiritual energy within his palms mercilessly gushed out towards Mu Chen. Mu Chen's toes inserted itself into the leaves. He lifted the leaves into the sky and retreated quickly. Bang! The fiery red spiritual energy gushed out and directly shattered the leaves dancing in the sky. Lu Mubai's body was like lightning and his hands were like claws. The fiery red spiritual energy emitted a boiling fluctuation as it headed straight towards the vital points of Mu Chen's chest. When Mu Chen noticed the fierce offensive of Lu Mubai, his eyes also turned cold. A dark black spiritual energy surged out from his fist and a limitless death seal appeared. A punch was blasted out. The limitless death seal flashed on the surface of Mu Chen's fist. As the black spiritual energy wrapped around it, an overbearing fluctuation was unleashed. Dong! Mu Chen's fist collided with Lu Mubai's sharp claws. A sound rang out and a wave of spiritual energy that could be seen with the naked eye spread out. This made the leaves under their feet blast out into the air. Mu Chen's body trembled slightly and retreated a few steps backwards. His eyes remained fixed on Lu Mubai. This guy really had reached the spiritual rotation stage. Spiritual movement stage late phase. Lu Mubai's body also shook for a bit and a hint of surprise appeared in his eyes. When Mu Chen was fighting against Lu Yang, he had just reached the spiritual movement stage middle phase. He never imagined that Mu Chen would be able to reach the spiritual movement stage late phase after such a short period of time. This cultivation speed wasn't slow at all. Moreover, what surprised him the most was Mu Chen blocking one of his attacks head-on. Although Mu Chen did not gain the upper hand, it was still extremely surprising for him to be able to fight against him like this with the strength of a spiritual movement stage late phase. You have a bit of skill. No wonder you also had this annoying appearance. I originally planned on making you lose completely in a formal competition during the fight for the space in the 5 great academies. However, I really dislike you, so it seems that I shouldn't give you that chance. Lu Mubai said heartlessly. Then, he took a step forward and a fiery red spiritual energy gushed out from within his body. This spiritual energy pressure directly enveloped Mu Chen. From his appearance, it seems that he really planned on killing Mu Chen here. Swish! Lu Mubai did not hesitate at all as his spiritual energy gushed out to shape-shift his palms into claws. The fiery red spiritual energy seemed to have formed into a shape of a fire eagle, and the claws combined with the fire eagle as he swept towards Mu Chen fiercely. Seeing this powerful offensive come from Lu Mubai, Mu Chen did not directly confront it again. Lu Mubai was indeed stronger than him. If he was to face him directly, it would fit Lu Mubai's intention. Mu Chen's toes touched the ground and he jumped back vigorously. As he retreated backwards, a dark black light flashed on his fingertips. Lu Mubai immediately chased after him. He let out a sneer as he watched Mu Chen constantly retreating and dodging his fierce attacks. Weren't you always so prideful? Why are you dodging here and there like a loser dog now? Mu Chen's reply was a sneer as well. However, he still did not plan on engaging in a frontal confrontation. Let's see where you can hide. Lu Mubai's eyes flashed and he lunged out. As the dense spiritual energy burst out, his claws turned into fists and he blasted out a punch from above towards Mu Chen. Hawk Inferno! A fiery red spiritual energy gushed out like flames when the punch was fired out. The winds formed by the fist within the flames erupted out like a matchless fire hawk. It completely surrounded all paths of retreat for Mu Chen. Mu Chen suddenly stopped and his eyes remained fixed on the fierce offensive that was approaching. In an instant, he placed his hands together and a cold cry came out from his mouth. Form array. Buzz. The air within him shook slightly when the words were shouted out. Beams of spiritual energy erupted out from the air and actually binded Lu Mubai's 4 limbs. This sudden binding made Lu Mubai's body stiffen. He immediately let out a hint of surprise. Spiritual array. However, the surprise only lasted for a moment. He already noticed how weak the binding ability of this spiritual array and let out a sneer. So it's only a tiny spiritual array. Boom! A dense spiritual energy gushed out and severed the beams formed by spiritual energy. Lu Mubai's offensive remained unchanged and he fiercely blasted it towards Mu Chen. However, the momentum of his offensive had weakened due to the tiny spiritual energy. This time, Mu Chen did not continue to dodge Lu Mubai's fierce offensive. A hint of chill gushed out from his black eyes. The dark black spiritual energy surrounded Mu Chen's arms and he immediately charged forward. His hands were placed together and 2 limitless death seals emerged quickly from between his palms. So you finally won't escape. Seeing this, a murderous intent surged through Lu Mubai's eyes. Above the winds formed by the punch, the fire hawk that was devouring the fiery red spiritual energy let out an abnormal fluctuation as it blasted out towards the center of Mu Chen's chest. Limitless Death Seal. With a low cry, a sound rang out from within Mu Chen's heart. The spiritual energy within his body flowed through his meridians like a flood. His palms were drawn back in towards his body and then it exploded outwards. The two limitless death seals let out a domineering glow within the center of his palms. Under the two vicious and cold gazes, the fist and palms swept over and finally collided with each other. Chapter 54 Black Poison Marsh. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Chapter 54 Black Poison Marsh. Boom. A loud sound suddenly resounded out among the tree shades. A storm. Like spiritual energy impact spread out and shattered the numerous leaves on the ground. The large trees also vibrated intensely and leaves appeared in the sky. As the leaves were falling down from the sky, the two figures that collided with each other trembled fiercely. Then, their bodies staggered backwards. Mu Chen's feet grazed the ground and he staggered backwards a dozen steps. He took a fierce stomp and stabilized his stature. At this moment, his palms were still trembling slightly. The overly powerful impact caused his palms to ache. Although his hands hurt, he still forcibly received Lu Mubai's fierce offensive. It was evident that the might of the two limitless death seals was finally revealed. Ever since he formed the two limitless death seals, Mu Chen was never able to truly unleash it completely. This is because the two opponents that he faced, Xue Tu and Ji Zong, far surpassed him in strength. With this difference in power, it was impossible to make up for it even if he activated the two limitless death seals. Therefore, Mu Chen never knew how powerful the two limitless death seals were. But right now, he finally knew. Although Lu Mubai had advanced into the spiritual rotation stage, he was probably still in the initial phase. This had surpassed Mu Chen, but the gap wasn't impossible for him to make up for, unlike with Xue Tu and Ji Zong. Thus, in this level of battle, the might of the two limitless death seals were finally displayed completely. Compared to Mu Chen's expression, Lu Mubai had a somewhat ashen face. His eyes remained fixed at Mu Chen. It was apparent that he did not understand how his opponent was able to fight against him like this by relying on the strength of a spiritual movement stage late phase. Although he still had some moves that he hasn't displayed yet, he was still in the spiritual rotation stage. This strength surpassed Mu Chen who knows how many times. But even with that, he was still not able to obtain the upper hand. How could he accept this? Was your prediction regarding me off? You originally thought that I am someone that you can just step on, but now it seems that it's different than what you expected. Mu Chen stared at Lu Mubai's ashen expression and said with a smile. The veins on Lu Mubai's forehead twitched. He immediately sucked in a deep breath and suppressed the rage within his heart. His eyes gradually turned abnormally dark and chill was felt within his voice. You really surpassed my expectations, but do you think that you have the right to act arrogant because of this? When the final words filled with chill exited Lu Mubai's mouth, the fiery red spiritual energy surged out again from within his body. His eyes were filled with a rich murderous intent. It was clear that Lu Mubai had finally revealed a true killing intent towards Mu Chen. Bvec, no matter what he had to do, he decided that he must wipe out this loathsome fellow. Seeing this, Mu Chen's eyes narrowed. The corners of his lips slowly rise up and formed a cold smile. Although it would be a bit troublesome to deal with Lu Mubai right now, Mu Chen would not let him get any benefits if this guy continues to pester him. Under the tree shades, the two of them confronted each other with razor-cold eyes. The leaves drifted down between the two of them endlessly as the atmosphere became tenser. Gotcha. However, just when the two of them had tensed their body up like a fully arched bow, a faint sound rang out from the forest behind. This strange sound caused the tense atmosphere to stiffen. Swish. The sound was getting closer and closer. Then, a dozen or so individuals suddenly came out from the forest and were behind Lu Mubai. Little master, we finally found you. Seeing the figures rushing over, Mu Chen frowned for a bit. This is because they were all Lu territory's men. Seeing this, Lu Mubai secretly let out a sigh of relief. He immediately sneered at Mu Chen and said, "It seems that you've used up all your luck. That might not be true." Hearing this, Mu Chen smiled and his eyes glanced behind him. A few familiar figures rapidly appeared from there. From their statures, it was Duan Wei and the others. It was clear that Duan Wei and the others were aware of the early commotion. Thus, they hurried over. Moreover, their expressions changed when they saw Lu Mubai's group. They instantly protected Mu Chen and stared vigilantly and unkindly at the other group. Mu Chen shook his head and relaxed his tense body. Since both sides' men had rushed over, there was no way of fighting again. Otherwise, the degree of the fight would probably attract a few of Black Yiri Swamp's spiritual beasts over. At that time, both sides would be troubled. Lu Mubai also seemed to have thought about this point and gritted his teeth as if he was unwilling. He stared at Mu Chen again and said, "It seems that you've survived again. It's useless if you only say it. You should say these words to me when you manage to completely step on me." Mu Chen said with a calm expression. "There will be a chance when that happens. I really want to see if you will still have such an annoying expression at that time." Lu Mubai took a deep glance at Mu Chen before waving his hand. He did not say anything more and brought the Lu territory's men back into the forest. Duan Wei and the others were relieved when they saw Lu Mubai's group leave. Then, he looked at Mu Chen and asked, "Little Lord, are you all right?" Mu Chen smiled and shook his head. His black eyes still had a hint of coldness as he stared at Lu Mubai's departing figure. Only after a while did he rush out in the other direction. "We should go as well. Let's hurry and reunite with my dad. This is an extremely vast, black swamp and a black deathly miasma was above it. The deathly miasma at this place was exceptionally strong. If anyone dares to charge into it, they would not be able to last for long even if they were at the spiritual rotation stage strength. In the black swamp, a faint poisonous gas emerges whenever the bubbles explode. From time to time, black mud would roll down. Under the black mud, scarlet and vicious eyes would emerge and slowly sweep around the surroundings. At this edge of the swamp, a group of men were a bit worried. The one leading them was Mu Feng. At this moment, he was frowning as he stared at the endless black swamp. "Territory Lord, the black poison marsh is too dangerous to pass. It is impossible for us to pass through the deathly miasma in the skies above. If we were to cross the swamp, not many of us would be able to survive from the black poison crocodile's attacks." A Mu territory's city lord said with a wry smile beside Mu Feng. "Can we enter the depths of the Black Yiri swamp from another location?" Zhou Yi frowned and asked. "There is a way, but we would have to go around for quite the distance. If we waste this much time, we would probably be far behind the Lu territory." A man replied. "Those guys, they really came fully prepared." Zhou Yi gritted his teeth. It was apparent that the Lu territory had investigated everything carefully. They might have sent a few men to investigate it before. Since they did not head down this way, they must have found another passageway to the depths of the Black Yiri swamp. Mu Feng secretly sighed. Then he asked, "Is there any news from Little Mu and the others?" "Not yet. Should I bring some men to search?" Zhou Yi asked. Mu Feng thought for a moment. But just when he was about to speak, his expression changed and he said with a smile. "No need, I've said it before, you should not underestimate that boy." As he said this, he turned around and looked at the forest behind them. He saw the bushes shake and a dozen figures quickly dashed over. The one leading was a handsome boy. It was Mu Chen. "Dad." Mu Chen stared at the men around the edge of the swamp and immediately smiled. He had finally caught up. "Are you all right?" Mu Feng smiled at Mu Chen and asked. Mu Chen shook his head and walked forward. He scanned the vast swamp and jokingly said. Dad, it seems that you found trouble. It was evident that Mu Chen also noticed the crisis that Mu Feng and the others were currently facing. Mu Feng could only shake his head sourly and let out a helpless sigh. He and Zhou Yi could rely on their spirit stage strength and forcibly leap over the swamp. However, it was impossible for the other men. If we continue to drag this out, the 9 Netherbird would probably be captured by the Lu territory. Zhou Yi also said with a bitter smile. Uncle Zhou, relax. The 9 Netherbird probably isn't that easy to obtain either. Mu Chen shook his head. Although he had never seen that 9 Netherbird before, he knew that the 9 Netherbird wasn't that simple to obtain through the information left behind by the skeleton. Moreover, it isn't impossible for us to pass through the black poison marsh safely. Mu Chen's gaze swept through the poisonous swamp in front of him and suddenly said with a smile. Oh. Hearing these words, Mu Feng, Zhou Yi and the others were surprised. Their eyes brightened up as they stared at Mu Chen. At this moment, the boy was leisurely patting his hands and was at ease. You have a plan. Mu Chen nodded his head when he saw the eager expressions. In the spiritual road, there were many places even more dangerous than this black poison marsh. Chapter 55 Plan. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 55 Plan. When they saw the smiling boy in front of them, Mu Feng and the others exchanged looks. A hint of joy and uncertainty appeared within their eyes. Even with their experiences, they were not able to deal with this. However, this boy could resolve it. Then let's hear you explain it. If you say any nonsense, I won't forgive you. Mu Feng smiled and asked. Mu Chen stared at the vast black poison marsh and said, even birds will find it difficult to cross the black poison marsh, once they step in, as it will be difficult for them to escape. It is impossible for one to leap through the sky filled with deathly miasma. However, if we were to have a floating object at the landing point, we would be able to progress forward. But soon after that, the numerous black poison crocodile within the black poison marsh would drag us down and rip us into shreds. We all know about this. Mu Feng chided. Actually, it's not that difficult to pass through. In the black poison marsh, what is able to freely pass through it? Mu Chen asked with a smile. Freely pass through. Mu Feng was slightly stunned and thought for a moment before saying. The black poison crocodile. Yes. As long as we capture a few of the black poison crocodile and use its crocodile skin as a boat, we will be able to pass through the black poison marsh without being obstructed. Moreover, the smell emitting from the black poison crocodile's skin will help us avoid attacks from the other black poison crocodiles. Mu Chen said. It's that simple. Mu Feng and the others frowned. This method wasn't too difficult to execute, but would it be able to pass through the black poison marsh just with this? Although the black poison crocodile's skin would have some effect, it would not completely allow them to be safe. Oh ho ho, there is indeed another step. Mu Chen smiled and replied. The black poison crocodile wasn't highly intelligent, but it wouldn't be easy to muddle past them. As for the final step, we should get the earlier steps completed first. Dad, Uncle Zhou, we'll leave the matter of killing the black poison crocodiles up to you two. When everybody heard this, they all looked at each other. They weren't sure what Mu Chen wanted to do. Boy, you better not be messing around. Mu Feng gritted his teeth. As of now, they really didn't have any ideas. Moreover, they could not afford delaying the time. Otherwise, they would be thrown far behind the Lu territory. Zhou Yi, we will attack. The others should prepare making boats. Mu Feng waved his hand and made an order. Yes. Although others were suspicious of the method that Mu Chen was talking about, they still immediately responded due to Mu Feng making it an order. They instantly spread out and began hacking at trees. Mu Feng and Zhou Yi glanced at each other. A dense spiritual energy suddenly erupted out from within their bodies. Mu Feng's body moved and appeared in the skies above the black poison marsh. A fiery red spiritual energy swept out from behind him and directly formed into a flame bird. The flame bird's body was filled with fiery red scales and had wings like a dragon. It seemed to be filled with power and an enormous spiritual energy pressure emitted out. Furthermore, it caused the black poison marsh below to tremble and numerous black poison crocodiles appeared out as the swamp shook. They stared in alert at the flame bird in the sky. Roar! Zhou Yi was also suspended in the sky and a mountain-like, brown rhinoceros emerged behind him. This heavy weight seemed to cause even the air to vibrate. The spirit stage powerhouses, who ingested a spiritual beast's soul essence, will all possess some of the distinct characteristics and strength that the spiritual beast had when it was alive. For example, Mu Feng's dragonfire bird granted Mu Feng speed, while Zhou Ye's mountain spirit rhinoceros granted him pure strength. Mu Qin stared at the majestic spiritual beasts behind Mu Feng and Zhou Yi. A burning passion could not help but pour out from his eyes. It seemed that the spirit stage was so powerful, that they far surpassed the spiritual rotation stage. Zhou Ye's hand clenched into a fist and with a cry, a punch was blasted out. A deep yellow spiritual energy that seemed to be mixed with the power of being heavy like a mountain roared out like a pillar of light and bombarded into the swamp. Boom! The earth seemed to have trembled at this moment. A deep crater was directly formed from the punch in the swamp. This enormous spiritual energy caused dozens of black poison crocodiles to fly out into the sky due to the tremor. Mu Feng also acted at this moment. The dragonfire bird behind his back let out a long roar at the sky. A violent and dense light of flame erupted out and directly wrapped around the dozens of black poison crocodile. Kacha! As the spiritual energy wriggled around, the dozens of black poison crocodile that had the strength of a spiritual rotation stage strength instantly died. Then, Mu Feng waved his hand and threw them at the edge of the marsh. When Mu Feng and Zhou Yi attacked, a couple of men suddenly stopped at a certain cliff path that was slightly away from the black poison marsh. It was the Lu territory's men that Mu Feng and the others met earlier. This spiritual energy fluctuation. Lu Zong's footsteps suddenly paused and he stared at the distance. It's Mu Feng and Zhou Yi that it seems that they met some sort of trouble. They should be trapped at the black poison marsh. Oh ho ho, with Mu Feng and Zhou Ye's strength, they could forcibly pass over. However, they will consume a large amount of strength. As for the others, they do not have the ability to pass through. Lu Qingtian, who was in front, said. If that's the case, they would basically be injured individuals when they reached the deepest part of the Black Yiri swamp. Would they even have the courage to fight with us then? Big Brother sure is thoughtful. If we have the chance at that time, we should not let them escape. Once the Mu territory does not have Mu Feng and Zhou Yi, won't that territory be easily and freely obtained by us, the Lu territory? Lu Ming said with a sneer. Lu Qingtian gave a faint smile and nodded. A tiny bit of killing intent surged through his eyes. If they have the opportunity, he naturally would not let it go. Right now, they only have to wait for the Mu territory's mentally tired and injured individuals at the deepest part of the Black Yiri swamp. Mu Feng, you could have enjoyed a happy life in the Mu territory, yet you do not want that. You just had to come and try to fight against my Lu territory for the 9 Netherbird. Then, don't blame me. Boom. The earth trembled as Mu Chen stared at Mu Feng tossing over a dozen of black poison crocodiles. He could not help but smack his lips. Every single black poison crocodile had the strength of a spiritual rotation stage initial phase. However, they were completely powerless against his dad and Uncle Zhou. Mu Chen let out a sigh of praise. Then, he called a couple of the experts to peel off the crocodile skin from the black poison crocodile. At the same time, a simple boat was already finished at the side. Mu Chen allowed them to wrap the crocodile skin around the tiny boats. If they were to throw the tiny boat into the black poison marsh, it would probably sink immediately. However, the black poison crocodile skin had a bit of spiritual energy fluctuation in it when they were still alive. It was just enough to let the boat float on the swamp. After everybody had finished doing this, eyes began to stare at Mu Chen again. Would this method really allow them to pass through the black poison marsh? It's your turn now. Mu Feng looked at Mu Chen with a serious expression and said. Don't fool around. If trouble appears after we enter the black poison marsh, there won't be many that will be alive. Dad, relax. Mu Chen smiled instead and pointed at the swamp. Our primary problem is to avoid the attacks from these black poison crocodiles. The black poison crocodiles are middle-rank spiritual beasts. But because they lived in the swamp for so long, their sensing abilities are extremely weak. Moreover, they do not have sharp eyes as well. As long as we are able to disrupt their vision, we would be able to mix in and pass over with the aura from these crocodile skin. How would we disrupt their visions? Mu Feng inquired with a frown. That's all thanks to Dad allowing me to learn about spiritual arrays over this period of time. Mu Chen smiled and gripped his palms. 8 spiritual seals soon emerged at his fingertips. You are already able to arrange a spiritual array. Seeing the spiritual seals at Mu Chen's fingertips, Mu Feng and Zhou Yi were shocked. The other Mu territory's men were also surprised as they stared at Mu Chen. It's only a tiny spiritual array. Mu Chen said with a smile. I will be arranging a tiny spiritual array known as the Soul Confusion Array. It will be able to cause a slight confusion. Although it will not have much effect, it is perfect to use to deal with the black poison crocodiles with low sensing abilities. Mu Feng and Zhou Yi exchanged glances at each other. They never imagined that Mu Chen's understanding about spiritual beasts surpassed even veterans like them. After saying this, Mu Chen ignored them and his face turned serious. He flicked his fingertips and the 8 spiritual seals vanished at the surroundings of the small boat. Then, everybody was able to faintly feel the air vibrating slightly and emitted out a strange fluctuation. Mu Chen's hand seals changed and finally let out a sigh of relief after a while. He wiped off the sweat from his forehead and said. It's done. Everybody hurriedly glanced over. They really saw that a faint mist emerged on the boat and enshrouded the majority of it away. This cover would be broken immediately if a human were to see it. Fortunately, the black poison crocodiles did not possess such high intelligence. There's really more to the little lord than what meets the eye. Duan Wei and the others could not help but let out a cry of admiration. They had always treated Mu Chen as a child before. However, now they discovered that this boy wasn't that simple. Although they weren't sure whether or not this method would work this smoothly, they still had a little bit of confidence after seeing this. Why are you praising him so early? It's only good if it works. Otherwise, we would have wasted all this effort and harmed others instead. Although Mu Feng had traces of satisfaction appearing on his face, he did not let out any praises. This was done so that the boy wouldn't be too proud of himself. Whether it is mule or a horse, you'll know soon. 1. A Chinese idiom where it means you'll only know their abilities only after you test them out. Mu Chen pouted his mouth. He directly pushed the tiny boat into the black poison marsh and was the first to jump onto it. Chapter 56 A Vicious Scheme. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Chapter 56 A Vicious Scheme. Pop. Within the black poison marsh, huge black poison bubbles rise up and burst apart. A smelly stench of poison gas rises up and further adds onto the deathly miasma enshrouding the air. At this moment, above the black poison marsh without many living creatures, a small boat wrapped with black poison crocodile skin was being paddled over cautiously. Everybody on the boat was extremely tensed up. They did not dare to make the slightest sounds as their eyes remained fixed on the swamp. Moreover, the spiritual energy within their bodies quietly surged. This group of men was the Mu territory's men who naturally used Mu Chen's method to pass through the Black Poison Marsh. Although Mu Chen's confidence gave Duan Wei and the others a little bit of confidence, they were still in a dangerous location. The feeling of how the slightest mistake would make the boat to capsize and turning them into the swamp's mud did not make them feel good. Compared to them being tensed, Mu Chen's face was a lot calmer. However, his eyes still remained fixed at his surroundings. This tiny boat contains many experts of the Mu territory. If they were to have any loss here, it would be a severe blow for the Mu territory. Mu Feng stood beside Mu Chen and had a seemingly calm face. However, it still carried a sense of seriousness. His entire body was tense and he would immediately act if he noticed that the situation was off. As everybody on board was tensed up, the small boat gradually entered the depths. A little bit of movement appeared in the swamp and the swamp filled with poison gas shook. Then, numerous hideous black poison crocodiles' heads emerged in the swamp and slowly swam towards the boat. Everybody on board had their eyes twitch when they saw this. Their heartbeat also accelerated. Amongst the silent boat, dozens of black poison crocodile were around the boat's surroundings. The pair of scarlet eyes brutally scanned across the black mud. Everybody immediately became alert. Under Mu Chen's control, the boat continued to maintain a slow and steady pace as it quietly crossed the swamp. Instead, Mu Feng and the others were able to feel relieved as the black poison crocodiles did not attack them. From their scarlet eyes, they were able to see some sort of confusion in them. It was evident that the black poison crocodile, who weren't highly intelligent, could vaguely sense that something was wrong, yet they were not able to figure out the reason of it. The small boat eventually passed through the black poison crocodile's encirclement smoothly. However, everybody on board still did not dare to breathe. Only after half an hour later, when they finally saw the edge of the swamp, they finally spat out the foul smell that had been within their hearts. Heh, we really crossed over. The little lord is really amazing. The atmosphere on the boat suddenly relaxed. Duan Wei and the others had a happy expression and could not help but praise Mu Chen. Dad, how is this? I didn't disgrace you, right? Mu Chen secretly let out a sigh of relief and clapped his hands as he directed a smile at Mu Feng. You damn brat. Mu Feng scoffed at him. However, he could not hide the pleasure within his eyes. This boy had finally grown up and was able to help him share the burden. At least it wasn't in vain for him to separate his father and mother over all these years. Little Mu really isn't the same now. Zhou Yi also let out an emotional sigh. Ever since Mu Chen came back from the spiritual road, he had changed too much. If he was an understanding boy with talent before, now, he was someone who could take up some of the responsibilities. Mu Feng nodded his head slightly. His hand rubbed Mu Chen's head and moved. He directly landed on the edge of the swamp and said, "We should also hurry, otherwise, we'll be too far behind the Lu territory." Yes. Duan Wei and the others all replied and came onto the shore one after another. After slightly reorganizing themselves, they kept alert and accelerated as they headed towards the depths of the Black Yiri swamp. The instant that Mu Feng and the others passed through the Black Poison Marsh and headed to the depths of the Black Yiri swamp, a cold gaze looked down from above at them from a mountain cliff far away. These guys, they actually made it through the Black Poison Marsh safely. How is that possible? Lu Ming stared at the figures at the distance and immediately turned pale. It seems that the Mu territory came prepared. Lu Zong frowned. He originally planned on taking them easily after the Mu territory's men were thoroughly exhausted through their trip across the Black Poison Marsh. However, he never expected them to have passed through without any efforts. A cold chill flashed through Lu Qingtian's eyes. The more prepared the Mu territory was, the greater the obstacle it was for them. These guys must be eliminated and the 9 Netherbird must belong to the Lu territory. As long as they have the 9 Netherbird, the Lu territory will become the overlord of the northern spiritual realm. And he, Lu Qingtian, will not be a territory lord anymore, but instead the lord of the northern spiritual realm. This raging ambition was burning within Lu Qingtian's eyes. Big brother, what should we do now? Lu Ming asked. Based on this scene, the Mu territory's men would soon catch up to them. There's no need to be impatient. Lu Qingtian said with a smile. How much time have we used to prepare for this plan? We had surveyed the Black Yuri swamp since a long time ago. The Mu territory still wants to fight against us recklessly without any preparations. Saying this, he stared at the depths of the Black Yuri swamp again and a cold chill surged through his eyes again. Let's go. At that place, I'll prepare a big gift to welcome them. Because they were gradually entering the depths of the Black Yuri swamp, Mu Feng and the others were getting more and more careful. In the depths of the Black Yuri swamp, there were genuine traces of high-rank spiritual beasts. If they were targeted by these vicious individuals, it would be particularly troublesome. After all, Mu Feng and the others would still have to be careful about the Lu territory's men at all times. The party quietly passed through the dark jungle. Even when they met some spiritual beasts, they did not dare to attack them. Instead, they would go around them and swiftly depart. This sort of torture lasted for half an hour before Mu Feng and the others finally walked out from the jungle. After passing through the jungle, there was a black mountain cliff. On the body of the mountain, there was an enormous crack that spread out from within it. It made it seem like a demon's giant mouth. Mu Feng and the others stared at the black mountain abyss. They frowned and their eyes carried a sense of seriousness. We are gradually approaching the depths of the Black Yuri swamp. Mu Feng said slowly. The area in front should be considered the true Black Yuri swamp. Inside this place, high-rank spiritual beasts exist. High-rank spiritual beast. Duan Wei and the others turned solemn. These spiritual beasts are equivalent to spirit stage powerhouses. Along the way, we will not kill any spiritual beasts. The high-rank spiritual beasts here are all extremely bloodthirsty. A tiny smell of blood would be able to attract them over to look. If it attracts more than 2 high-rank spiritual beasts, we would have to pay a great price. Mu Chen nodded. This place was a lot more dangerous than the northern spiritual field. Let's go, all of you should be careful. Mu Feng waved his hand and he led the way as he charged towards the dark crack on the body of the mountain. Behind him, Mu Chen, Zhou Yi and the others were cautiously following. Because the sky was often shrouded by the deathly miasma, the deepest part of the Black Yuri swamp was quite dark and damp. From time to time, a variety of muffled and bloodthirsty roars would come from the distance. Mu Feng and the others cautiously walked in the shadows and avoided all places where traces of spiritual beasts appeared. Moreover, Mu Chen could feel the surging spiritual energy from Mu Feng and Zhou Ye's bodies. It was evident that they were prepared to deal with any emergency situations. However, they did not meet with any obstacles along the way. This smoothness made Duan Wei and the others quite relieved. According to the speed that they are going at, they would soon reach the deepest part of the Black Yuri swamp. But Mu Chen frowned instead of feeling relieved like the others. This smoothness made him feel uneasy instead. Just when they turned once at the mountain path, Mu Chen exchanged gazes with Mu Feng. He could also see a sense of vigilance within the latter's eyes. It was obvious that the latter had the same feeling. As the mountain path turned, their visions widened up in front. It was a vast mountain space. This area was the intersection point between the 3 mountain peaks and was surrounded by very steep cliffs. Mu Feng looked at this area and his eyes suddenly became serious. He lifted his head and remained fixed at a secluded location on a cliff. At that location, a few figures slowly emerged. Oh ho ho, Mu Feng, you're really not that slow. On the cliff, Lu Qingtian stared down at Mu Feng and the others with a smile. It's the Lu territory's men, be careful. Seeing this, Zhou Yi let out a cry and a dense spiritual energy surged out from his body. Lu Qingtian, what are you planning to do? Mu Feng let out a deep cry. The Lu territory seemed to be completely aware of this Black Eerie swamp, while they knew nothing about it. This undoubtedly made them to be quite passive. Seeing you be this careful, it really makes us not that happy. This is why I want to find you to help us out. Lu Qingtian smiled, but it was a hideous smile. Then, he waved his hand and the Lu territory's men threw a big jar down. Crack! The jar burst open when it hit the ground and a black-red liquid instantly spread out. The jar was actually filled with sticky, fresh blood. Moreover, with the fresh blood spreading out, a thick stench of blood emitted outwards. Seeing this scene, Mu Feng and the others' expressions became disgusted. The effects of just animal blood aren't that great. Lu Qingtian smelled the stench of the blood and a hint of coldness surged through his eyes again. He suddenly waved his sleeves and dozens of Lu territory's men were blasted out. Shrill screams emitted out instantly. Boom! Lu Qingtian had an expressionless face and flicked his fingers. Numerous spiritual energy lights erupted out and fiercely bombarded the dozen individuals. Bang! A deep cry rang out. The dozen individuals actually exploded in midair and a mist of blood poured down. This scene was extremely bloody. Mu Feng and the others' eyes turned quite gloomy and dark. Roar! Just when their eyes turned gloomy, numerous roars finally rang out from the depths of the Black Eerie swamp. The roars were filled with violent spiritual energy fluctuations. High-rank spiritual beasts. Mu Feng's face finally turned completely pale. Lu Qingtian's scheme was really ruthless. Chapter 57 Seizing an Opportunity. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Chapter 57 Seizing an Opportunity. Roar. When the bloodthirsty roars rang out from a distance away, Mu Feng and the others had turned pale. They actually fell for the trap that the Lu territory designed this time. Mu Feng, how is it? Do you like this big gift? Lu Qingtian stared down from above at Mu Feng. The sounds of laughter had a bit of sarcasm within it. Just how much time do you think we, the Lu territory, had spent on this 9 Netherbird plan? You think that you're qualified to compete with us just because you earned a little bit of information. Forget it, since you came, you'll have to pay a price. Just treat it as buying a lesson. Mu Feng stared coldly at Lu Qingtian. However, he did not plan on arguing with him. His eyes flashed and he was constantly thinking for a method. From the spiritual energy fluctuations within the roars earlier, it was definitely high-rank spiritual beasts. If they were entangled by these high-rank spiritual beasts, they would definitely be gravely injured and thoroughly consume their strength even if they managed to resolve it. At this moment, Lu Qingtian and the others would not give up on this opportunity. However, if they were to leave now, they would follow the Lu territory's intentions. They would not be able to stop them from obtaining the 9 Netherbird. And once the Lu territory obtains the 9 Netherbird, the Mu territory would be in great danger. In this situation, they were forced into a great dilemma. What should we do now? Zhou Yi could not help but ask. We'll first look at the situation. Mu Feng whispered with a pale expression. Beside him, Mu Chen also frowned. The bastards from the Lu territory sure are disgusting and are always trying to trouble them. Roar. While the Mu territory's men remained on alert, a beast's roar resounded again from the distant. Then, everybody heard the sound of the winds breaking approaching quickly. Soon, 3 lights quickly charged over from the depths of the Black Eerie swamp and appeared around the mountain cliffs. 3 high-rank spiritual beasts. Seeing the 3 lights, Mu Feng could not help but grit his teeth. Under everybody's nervous gazes, the 3 lights swiftly revealed their huge bodies above the cliff. Their scarlet beast eyes were filled with bloodthirstiness and brutality. On the left mountain cliff, there was a blood-red, giant lion. A pair of sharp, purple wings was on the back of the lion and it looked extremely majestic. On the right mountain cliff, there was a completely black, giant beast and it seemed to be made of steel. The sunlight shone down on its body and made it extremely dazzling. It was as if it was a killing machine. Purple-winged lion. Black steel beast. When Duanwei and the others saw the two giant beasts, their faces changed and they exclaimed loudly. It really is a high-rank spiritual beasts. These two spiritual beasts probably possess the strength of a spirit stage initial phase. That is an aquablaze crane. Mu Feng's eyes swept past the two high-rank spiritual beasts and landed on the final one. His eyes instantly turned serious. It was a huge black crane. However, the wings of the crane revealed different colors. One was a blue like the flowing water, while the other was fiery red like a flame. When they flapped, it was quite beautiful as it was like fire and water rushing out. However, a deadly force was within this brilliance. The aquablaze crane was the strongest amongst the three high-rank spiritual beasts. Its strength had reached the spirit stage middle phase. Mu Feng, it seems that you're quite unlucky. Even the aquablaze crane was lured out. It seems that we'll be able to witness a good fight between men and beast. Lu Qingshan stared at this formation and could not help but laugh. Then, he waved his hand and his men secretly hid in the cliff. Right now, the high-rank spiritual beasts were lured by the blood below and were not aware of them. Assholes. Zhou Yi gritted his teeth and his eyes were filled with fury. Territory Lord, what should we do? If we were to fight against the three high-rank spiritual beasts, we would probably suffer sneak attacks from the Lu territory after we dealt with them. Duanwei said with a worried expression. Mu Feng's eyes turned grim. At this moment, the three high-rank spiritual beasts had already targeted them. If they were not going to fight, they must retreat. However, he really wasn't willing to retreat now. Seeing Mu Feng's flashing eyes, Duanwei and the others did not dare to disturb him. They could only stare at the three eagerly high-rank spiritual beasts as their palms began to fill with cold sweat. Mu Chen also understood the situation that they were in. He frowned and an idea flashed through his head. Shortly after, he narrowed his eyes and a light seemed to have passed through the night. Like black eyes of his. Dad. Mu Chen said out quietly. Mu Feng responded absently. He was showing a troublesome expression and had a headache due to thinking too much. Can Uncle Zhou and you block off these three high-rank spiritual beasts? Mu Chen asked. Mu Feng glanced at him and nodded his head helplessly as he said. But this way, your Uncle Zhou and I would both consume a great deal of strength. Once the two of us are weakened, Lu Qingtian would definitely attack. You don't have to kill these three high-rank spiritual beasts. It's fine as long as you block them off while allowing yourself to consume the least amount of energy. Mu Chen said. Entering into a stalemate like that would not benefit us. Mu Feng frowned and said. If we cannot kill these three high-rank spiritual beasts, we can only go away. I have a plan to get rid of them. Mu Chen hesitated as he spoke. Mu Feng's body trembled at this moment. He looked in surprise at Mu Chen. Beside him, Zhou Yi and the others also had an incredulous expression as they stared at Mu Chen. These were three high-rank spiritual beasts. They are comparable to spirit stage powerhouses. How is it possible for Mu Chen, who is merely a spiritual movement stage late phase, to get rid of them? You don't necessarily have to rely on your fists to get rid of them. Mu Chen curled his lips and said with a smile. There's something calling seizing the opportunity. It's something I enjoy doing the most. In the spiritual road, it saved me many times. What are you ultimately planning to do? Mu Feng could not help but ask. Could this boy really have a way of dealing with it? There's no time to explain. You should stall them while I go prepare. Mu Chen stared at the three high-rank spiritual beasts that would lunge over at any time. There was no time to explain it in detail, so he could only urge them to do it. Hearing this, Mu Feng and Zhou Yi exchanged glances and gritted their teeth as they nodded. Right now, Mu Chen truly made them feel assured. Since he said this, then, he really should have some sort of plan. I'll leave this place to you. Mu Chen did not say anything more and immediately turned around. He quickly vanished as he rushed towards the outside. Someone ran. Seeing Mu Chen escape, Lu Qingtian, who was concerned about the movements of Mu Feng and the others, frowned and spoke. The one that ran away was Mu Chen. What is he planning to do? Is he planning to escape by himself? Lu Mubai whispered in confusion. He did not know why, but he always felt a slight unease coming from Mu Chen. Forget it. We should not care about him. He is only a boy at the spiritual movement stage late phase. Without Mu Feng and the others' protection, he probably wouldn't be able to escape the Black Yiri swamp. Lu Qingtian was not too concerned. Compared to the pillars of the Mu territory, Mu Feng and Zhou Yi, who would care about a measly Mu Chen? Lu Mubai also nodded. He had indeed overestimated Mu Chen. How is it possible for him to reverse the situation they are in? What nonsense! Boom! While they were talking, a dense spiritual energy erupted out from below. They saw Mu Feng and Zhou Yi charging out in the lead as they headed straight towards the three high-rank spiritual beasts staring at them. Mu Feng stopped the Aquablaze crane and the black steel beast. After all, he was at the spirit stage late phase. He would not be disadvantaged even if he was fighting against two by himself. On the other hand, Zhou Yi was only at the spirit stage initial phase. He was neck and neck against the purple-winged lion. This amazing confrontation instantly set off bursts of spiritual energy impacts. Every time they fought against each other, the air seemed to tremble. Lu Qingtian let out a playful smile as he stared at the fierce battle. However, his eyes remained cold. Mu Feng, just attack with all your strength. Since you're unwilling to leave, then leave your life behind here. When the fierce battle broke out in the valley, Mu Chen quickly scurried out. Then, he leapt onto a hill and his eyes looked at a vast black forest. His hands instantly turned over and a flute covered with engravings appeared in his hand. This item was the spirit bug flute that he had obtained before. Chapter 58 Luring Bees. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 58 Luring Bees. Mu Chen gripped on the icy cold spirit bug flute and he contemplated for a while. Then, he no longer hesitated and placed the flute at his lips. The spiritual energy within his body surged out and was blown into the spirit bug flute. BVEC Mu Chen wasn't a spirit bug user. He naturally did not have the ability to activate the spirit bug flute. However, he knew the basic method of using it. If it was an experienced spirit bug user, they would be able to lure over the spirit bugs that they wanted with their spirit bug flute. However, Mu Chen could not do this. But luckily, the most massive population within the Black Yiri swamp was the devouring spirit bees. It should be feasible for him to lure them over if he blew the spirit bug flute at this place. Woo! As the idea flashed through Mu Chen's mind, the spirit bug flute also emitted a faint light. The engravings on it also activated and a strange sound wave came out from the spirit bug flute. Then, it spread out far away. The sound wave wasn't particularly loud. It was even to the point where it would be easily overlooked if you do not listen to it carefully. However, Mu Chen knew that the spirit bugs were extremely sensitive to this kind of sound wave. Mu Chen continued to pour spiritual energy into the spirit bug flute and allowed the sound waves to spread out endlessly. Moreover, he took the time to watch at the sky in the depths of the Black Yiri swamp. At that location, the spiritual energy fluctuation was gradually become more violent. It seems that his dad and Uncle Zhou had already began to fight against the three high-rank spiritual beasts. He must hurry. A hint of anxiety passed through Mu Chen's eyes. The three high-rank spiritual beasts aren't weaklings. For his dad and Uncle Zhou, every minute that they are entangled with the spiritual beasts means a minute of consumption. When their strength is consumed to a certain extent, the men from the Lu territory hiding in secret would definitely attack. And that scene was something that Mu Chen did not wish to see. The sound from the flute leisurely spread out. However, there wasn't much movement occurring in the distance. This made Mu Chen's palms sweat. Was his method useless? Although he said it confidently in front of Mu Feng and the others, that was only comforting them. Mu Chen knew the struggle occurring in Mu Feng's heart. Since Mu Feng didn't want to leave like this and let the Lu territory obtain the 9 Netherbird, but at the same time, he did not want the Lu territory to stealthily attack them, Mu Chen could only think of this plan to break through this extremely unfavorable situation. If he was unable to lure the devouring spirit bees over, his method of seizing an opportunity would be useless. "Brothers, please give me some face," Mu Chen muttered in his heart. While Mu Chen was waiting anxiously, the time quickly passed. In a blink of an eye, nearly 10 minutes had passed. The spiritual energy fluctuation in the valley was getting even more violent. Even the earth started to tremble. It was evident that the battle was becoming more intense. He didn't have much time left. Mu Chen gritted his teeth and was prepared to turn around. The gaze he stared at the distance suddenly became serious and joy filled his face. "It's coming." In a distant location, a black cloud covered the sky and swiftly approached. A unique buzzing sound came from afar. The devouring spirit bees were finally lured over. Mu Chen endured the joy within his heart and put away the spirit bug flute. He immediately turned and scurried back towards the valley. Boom! In the valley, a violent spiritual energy exploded forth. It caused the cliffs to tremble and a few boulders rolled down from the cliff. Duan Wei and the others stared nervously at the 2 battle circles. At that location, there were 2 humans and 3 beasts. They had already collided fiercely with each other and the lights from spiritual energy surged out. It turned the rubbles within the valley into powder. Damn it! Seeing this stalemate, Duan Wei looked at the certain location on the mountain cliff again. At that place, a cold gaze stared downwards. It was obvious that this situation was what the Lu territory intended it to be. "The little lord hasn't come back yet." Someone looked behind and could not help but speak. Duan Wei shook his head with a bitter smile. He did not know what Mu Chen had gone to do. However, from his earlier appearance, he probably did this because he had some sort of idea. However, he did not know whether or not Mu Chen's idea would be able to help them break out of this predicament. Just wait a little longer. If the Lu territory dares to attack, we would not let them have an easy time. Duan Wei grinded his teeth and said. The other people nodded as well. Their eyes flashed fiercely. Just when they were beginning their preparations, a sudden sound rang out from behind. They hastily turned their heads back and saw Mu Chen's figure quickly approaching. "Little Lord." Seeing this, Duan Wei and the others were happy. "Dad, Uncle Zhou, retreat." Mu Chen stared at the 2 battle circles and shouted out. Mu Feng and Zhou Yi, who had always been waiting for news from Mu Chen, instantly retreated backwards. However, the 3 high-rank spiritual beasts were hot in pursuit. Mu Chen stared at the 3 high-rank spiritual beasts as they chased over and gripped his palm. A bottle emerged and he opened the bottle. A strange fragrance emitted out from within it. Bang! Mu Chen smacked the bottle and the black liquid within flew out. Mu Chen's palms moved and his spiritual energy was like the wind as it spread the black liquid apart. It turned into black moist air and smashed into the 3 high-rank spiritual beasts' body. The black moist air stuck itself on the 3 high-rank spiritual beasts' body. However, they did not give the slightest reaction to it. They did not even care about Mu Chen, who was like a weak ant-like existence in their eyes, and continued chasing after Mu Feng. Duan Wei and the others were also confused when they saw Mu Chen's strange actions. Enter that fissure. Mu Chen pointed at a mountain crack nearby and quickly shouted. Duan Wei and the others looked at each other. However, they immediately gritted their teeth and nodded their head. They charged straight into the crack within the mountain. Mu Chen also quickly followed them. In the rear, Mu Feng and the others were at the back, and they caused the three high-rank spiritual beasts to retreat by erupting out a dense amount of spiritual energy. What are they doing? The Lu territory's men watched the Mu territory's men enter the crack within the mountain and were stunned. If they did this, isn't that just cutting off all paths of escape? When did these guys become so stupid? Lu Qingtian also frowned. With Mu Feng's intelligence, how could he do such a stupid thing? Big brother. Lu Ming whispered. It was obvious that he was unsure of this situation as well. Lu Qingtian narrowed his eyes. Then in the next moment, his face suddenly changed. He lifted his head and stared at the outside of the valley. A buzzing sound suddenly became louder. This is devouring spirit bees. Lu Ming and the others also noticed it. They hurried, lifted their heads, and they saw a black cloud enshrouding the sky within their sights. A buzzing sound echoed in the valley. Roar! The three high-rank spiritual beasts in the valley also noticed the devouring spirit bees approaching. They instantly let out uneasy growls. Against such a terrifying amount of devouring spirit bees, even high-rank spiritual beasts would be in a predicament. The black cloud finally poured into the valley like a black torrent. They did not stop at all and rushed in like a flood. Then, under the gazes of both Mu Feng and Lu Qingtian's men, they charged straight towards the three high-rank spiritual beasts. Roar! After being surrounded by the black cloud, the three high-rank spiritual beasts instantly struggled fiercely. The violent spiritual energy constantly erupted out and they squashed thousands of devouring spirit bees. However, following this, they were surrounded by even more devouring spirit bees. Mu Feng and the others watched as the roaring sounds became increasingly faint within the black clouds. They could not help but shiver. Afterwards, they slowly turned their heads towards the boy, who was smiling brilliant, and their faces turned stiff. Could this be the plan that Mu Chen mentioned? But how did he attract all these devouring spirit bees over and made them attack only the three high-rank spiritual beasts? The scheme he devised was too incredible. Chapter 59 Arrival. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Chapter 59 Arrival Buzz. The devouring spirit bees' unique buzzing sounds echoed within the valley. It made everybody feel horrified. Especially since there were three high-rank spiritual beasts struggling within the black torrent. Because of the three high-rank spiritual beasts' resistance, the valley floor was covered with corpses of devouring spirit bees. Moreover, the devouring spirit bees did not show the slightest signs of retreating, and their scarlet eyes stared crazily at the three high-rank spiritual beasts. Waves and waves of attacks continued to charge over at them. The black torrent seemed to form into a gigantic storm, and anywhere that storm passed by, only white bones would remain for any living creature. The two groups of men hidden in the valley shivered as they stared at the scene in front of them. At this moment, no matter which party was involved, they would probably be completely annihilated. Mu Chen's body was also hidden in the crack inside the body of the mountain. He peered through the gaps and stared inside the valley. The spirit bug flute and the black liquid with a strange fragrance were already returned to his mustard seed bracelet. He did not dare reveal it all. If it attracted the devouring spirit bees over, there was truly no way out for them. The black storm inside the valley lasted for approximately 10 minutes. The original fierce and powerful spiritual energy fluctuations gradually weakened until it finally disappeared completely. When the three spiritual energy fluctuations disappeared, everybody knew that the three high-rank spiritual beasts were also wiped out by the devouring spirit bees. This made Mu Feng and the others smack their lips. Although the devouring spirit bees were quite weak individually, they became one of the most deadliest creatures within the Black Eyrie swamp. After the enormous swarm of devouring spirit bees eliminated the 3 high-rank spiritual beasts, it circled the valley once before quickly disappearing with its buzzing sound. As the devouring spirit bees left, Mu Fong and the others drilled out from the fissure and gazed at the center of the valley. Only bones remained of the 3 originally majestic high-rank spiritual beasts. Traces of blood cling onto the white bones, making it look particularly cold. At this moment, Mu Chen walked over leisurely and obtained the 3 abnormally dazzling spiritual beasts' soul essences from within their cranial. He did not show any restraint and placed it within his mustard seed bracelet. This was a high-rank spiritual beast's soul essence. Its value far surpassed the ones that they obtained earlier in the northern spiritual field. This level of soul essence would even make spirit stage powerhouses moved. After collecting the spiritual beast's soul essences, Mu Chen smiled and raised his head. He stared at the mountain cliff and said, "What other schemes do you have? You want to continuing leading the high-rank spiritual beasts over? I don't mind luring the devouring spirit bees over again." In the cliff, the Lu territory's men all had exceptionally ugly expression. Lu Qingtian's eyes also narrowed and he fixed his eyes at Mu Chen as he said with an incredulous tone. "You lured the devouring spirit bees over. You think that you were the one who did it?" Mu Chen's smile turned cold and said, "I think that you guys should hurry and get out of the Black Eyrie swamp. Otherwise, you might end up having the same fate as them when the swarm of devouring spirit bees appears again." The Lu territory's men were slightly in a mess. Lu Zong, Lu Ming and the others' expressions all changed. They had personally seen how powerful the swarm of devouring spirit bees was. If they fell inside of the swarm, they would definitely die. "You immature and inexperienced brat, you're still too inexperienced if you want to intimidate me." Lu Qingtian recovered from the shock and let out a cold sneer as he said. "You might have lured the devouring spirit bees over, but it was obvious that you do not have the ability to manipulate them. The black mist that you sent over before was probably the reason why the swarm of devouring spirit beast would attack the 3 high-rank spiritual beasts, right?" Mu Chen smiled. However, he was shocked at how sharp Lu Qingtian was. He was able to see his earlier actions clearly. "Mu Fong, you have a good son." Lu Qingtian stared coldly at Mu Fong. They should have been able to severely injure the Mu territory today, yet they were stopped by a boy. This made them feel wrathful flames within their hearts. "Oh ho ho, thank you for the praise." Mu Fong also laughed and said. "Lu Qingtian, so what other schemes do you have? Are you going to fight personally now?" "That's great, it's been a while since I sought advice from you. Why don't we have a fight here?" Lu Qingtian turned gloomy. Although he was quite furious, he still understood that it wasn't the time for them to fight against the Mu territory. Otherwise, they would suffer too much damage and would not be able to obtain the 9 Netherbird. "Let's see how long you can act proud." Lu Qingtian's voice was cold as he spoke. Then, he no longer said anything and waved his hand. He gathered the Lu territory's men and headed quickly to the depths of the Black Eyrie swamp. Right now, they did not want to waste time to stop Mu Fong and the others. This is because they knew that it would end up all in vain. "Let's go, we'll follow them." Seeing this, Mu Fong let out a cold cry. His body charged out and led the Mu territory's men as they followed behind Lu Qingtian. After the Lu territory's plan failed, they were not able to get rid of the Mu territory's men anymore. The 2 groups of men quickly entered the Black Eyrie swamp one after another. This time, Lu Qingtian and the others became more honest. They no longer dared to cause any more trouble since they were afraid of getting involved in it as well. Along the way, the 2 groups of men cautiously headed forward and did not dare to disturb the other spiritual beasts. This rapid pace lasted for approximately half an hour. After half an hour since the 2 groups of men advanced vigilantly, the black color in the valley began to subside and their vision widened up. Swish! Mu Feng's team stepped out of the valley and appeared on top of a high slope. He gazed in front and his expression became serious. In front of him was a vast basin. The ground at this place seemed to be burned by flames, causing it to show a charred color. Of course, the thing that frightened them the most wasn't this, but the white bones within the basin. From the sizes, these bones were probably from spiritual beasts. They assumed a posture where they are crazily running towards the front. From their appearance, it seemed that something had attracted them and made them unable to free themselves. Mu Chen stared at the white bones on the ground and sucked in cold air. Just what happened over here? Why did so many spiritual beasts die? His eyes slightly went up and stared in front. Then, he saw it. In the center of the basin, there is a large black volcanic mountain. The dark zone on the very peak of the mountain seemed to be like a demon's gigantic mouth and would devour everything. This place. Mu Chen's eyes turned serious. The scene in front of him was somewhat familiar. He pondered for a moment before he remembered. This scene was exactly the same as the one inscribed on the copper piece. Mu Chen tilted his head and exchanged glances with Mu Feng. He could tell from the other person's eyes that he was surprised and delighted. It was apparent that this place is where the Nine Netherbird was located at. It was also where their goal was located at. Chapter 60 The Strange Rock. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Chapter 60 The Strange Rock. Inside the black basin, a cool breeze blew and the numerous dense bones trembled slightly. This scene made everybody shiver. This place is where the Nine Netherbird is located at. In this area, the eyes of the two groups of men lit up. The gazes they used to stare at the black volcano were mouth-watering and filled with heat. Lu Qingtian's eyes were burning. He immediately turned around and stared at Mu Feng. Then, he let out a sneer as his dense spiritual energy surged out and he charged straight towards the volcano. Behind him, Lu Zong, Lu Ming, Lu Mubai and the others also immediately follow. Let's move. Mu Feng also let out a deep shout. The dense spiritual energy erupted out from within his body and formed into a huge flame bird. The dragonfire bird's wings shook and turned into a flash of light. Afterwards, Mu Feng jumped onto the back of the dragonfire bird. The human and bird charged out. This violent spiritual energy directly caused a storm to appear in midair. Humph! Seeing Mu Feng head over, Lu Qingtian's eyes turned cold. He let out a low cry and a silver light erupted out from within his body. A giant silver beast emerged soon after. This giant beast was like a giant ape. However, the entire body was filled with silver scales. On the scales, lightning flashed across them. Moreover, lightning rumbling sounds actually burst out as it howled. This is the lightning scale beast. Mu Chen stared at the gigantic silver beast behind Lu Qingtian and was slightly surprised. This was a powerful spiritual beast ranked at the 133th place in the Myriad Beast Records Earth ranking. Although it had not reached the heaven-rank spiritual beasts, it was still a top existence amongst the high-rank spiritual beasts. Bang! The lightning scale beast stopped on the ground and lightning surged out. It carried Lu Qingtian as it stopped Mu Feng. Huh, Lu Qingtian, you finally couldn't resist on fighting. Then let me see how much we've both improved over the past year. Seeing this, Mu Feng was not afraid and instead laughed. The dragonfire bird beneath him let out a sharp cry and charged towards Lu Qingtian as it released out a violent, fiery red spiritual energy. Boom! The two massive monsters collided fiercely with each other in midair. The violent spiritual energy impact caused many of the bones below to shatter. The territory lords from the Mu territory and Lu territory had already begun their fight. The men from both sides naturally would not be polite with each other and their eyes were filled with viciousness as they charged at each other. Leave Zhou Yi to me. The Lu territory's second master, Lu Zong, stared darkly at Zhou Yi, who was leading the Mu territory's men over. With a cold cry, a green light emitted out and an illusionary giant beast formed behind him. It was a giant scorpion who was completely green. A faint fragrance came out from its body and it was obvious that it was poisonous. Jaded venomous scorpion, ranked at the 204 place in the Myriad Beast Records Earth ranking. Mu Chen immediately recognized the jaded scorpion when he noticed it. Dawn. The men from both sides had finally fought with each other. The sounds from the fight also broke the silence within this place and the spiritual energy endlessly emitted out along with murderous intent. Under Duan Wei and the others' protection, Mu Chen also collided against the Lu territory's men. However, he quickly rushed past and did not hesitate to shoot off like an arrow towards the black volcano. Mu Bai, stop him. Seeing this, Lu Ming, who was fighting against Duan Wei, instantly cried out. Lu Mubai nodded his head when he heard this and turned around. He quickly chased after Mu Chen. When Mu Chen heard the sounds of winds breaking behind him, the corner of his eyes twitched and he frowned slightly. He immediately circulated the spiritual energy within his body and infused it into his legs, causing his speed to accelerate again. You want to run away? Seeing this, Lu Mubai snorted and accelerated as well in order to pursue him. The two of them quickly jumped into the black basin one after another and approached the black volcano. They climbed up the steep mountain cliff like a nimble monkey. Swish! Just when Mu Chen was rapidly arriving at the peak, Mu Chen suddenly felt a fierce wind shooting out from behind him. He immediately lunged forward and pressed onto the ground with his palms. His body rotated in midair. Ding! A sharp dagger fiercely inserted itself at the location where Mu Chen would have landed on. It directly pierced through the hard volcanic mountain. Swish swish. Lu Mubai gripped his hands again and a couple of daggers were fired out again. This time, he directly aimed it in front of Mu Chen. It was obvious that he was trying to drive Mu Chen to retreat. Feeling the sounds of wind breaking, Mu Chen gripped his hand and numerous spiritual seals quickly emerged. Then, it shot out and quickly integrated itself into the air. Chi chi. Numerous light beams emerged. The air became distorted and spiritual energy fluctuations stormed out from the beams of spiritual energy. It directly blocked out all the daggers. When he arranged the tiny spiritual array for defense, Mu Chen did not plan on letting Lu Mubai have an easy time. He passed through a pile of sharp volcanic rocks and let out an whirlwind kick with one foot as he stepped on the ground with the other. The sharp volcanic rocks instantly covered the sky as it fired off towards Lu Mubai, who was behind Mu Chen. Bang bang! Seeing this, Lu Mubai clenched his hands into a fist and punched out. The fiery red spiritual energy mixed with the violent winds shattered the volcanic rocks that were shot over. Although Lu Mubai blocked the attack, his speed was reduced slightly. He watched as Mu Chen took advantage of this gap and scurried away like a nimble monkey. He could not help but grit his teeth before hurriedly chasing after Mu Chen again. The two of them continued to display various means to block the other. Anything that could be utilized was used by them. This scene seemed quite lively. However, only the two of them could feel how dangerous it was. They had never shown any mercy when they attacked. Swoosh! After a few minutes while one chased and the other ran, Mu Chen was a step earlier to reach the peak of the black volcano. The peak was a sunken crater. However, it was quite dark so Mu Chen was not able to see what was inside. Boom! Mu Chen's eyes swept across the crater of the volcano. Behind him, the fist winds bombarded over from behind. He hesitated for a moment before dropping straight down into the volcano's crater. Lu Mubai followed him in hot pursuit. He noticed Mu Chen entering the dark volcano's crater and hesitated for a moment as well. However, he soon gritted his teeth and followed. The two of them quickly slid into the crater of the volcano and landed vigorously inside of the volcano's crater. Inside the volcano's crater, the lights were dimmed and it was filled with black volcanic rocks. Mu Chen's gaze quickly scanned across. But to his surprise, he did not see any traces of the Nine Netherbird. There were only many black volcano rocks here caused by the volcanic impact at this location. As Lu Mubai entered the crater, he did not immediately attack Mu Chen. He also scanned the surroundings to search for traces of the Nine Netherbird. The two of them scanned the surroundings, yet their eyes were filled with doubt. Mu Chen frowned. He carefully moved around the bottom of the crater and continued to search. At the same time, Lu Mubai also glanced at Mu Chen before moving away. It was apparent that he had the same idea as Mu Chen. The bottom of the volcano's crater wasn't too spacious. The two of them quickly went in a circle, but they did not have any harvest. This made the doubt within their eyes grow even further. Could what the copper piece mentioned be fake? Mu Chen curled his lips and searched the surroundings. At this moment, he had unconsciously walked to the center of the bottom crater. At this location, there were a couple of gigantic, black volcanic rocks that had been pushed out by the volcano in the surroundings. He stared at these gigantic, black volcanic rocks, yet he did not see anything. He sighed helplessly in his heart and was about to turn around. However, he suddenly stopped and gripped his palms within his sleeves. Then, the ancient copper piece emerged within his palms. At this moment, the copper piece emitted out a faint heat. This copper piece, can it sense the location of the Nine Netherbird? An idea appeared in Mu Chen's mind. He immediately looked quietly at Lu Mubai, who was searching at another direction, before heading quietly towards the gigantic, black volcanic rocks. He touched each of the black rocks as he passed by. Shortly after, he stopped moving and stared at the slightly shining, gigantic black rock in front of him. As he stood here, the copper piece within his hand turned exceptionally hot.